Welcome to T News 9 channel. Today, we're reading from the Cases That Wait. This is chapter 7-6, What Remains. When nothing happens, something always remains. The files were thinner now, not closed, settled. I moved one to the archive shelf, not the back, but within reach. Some knowledge shouldn't be buried. The watch file stayed open, not active, just present. A reminder of how easily attention can drift, how quickly the threads can unravel. The city felt normal again. That was the goal, the entire point of the long nights and the endless waiting. But normal isn't neutral. Normal is practiced. It's a deliberate act, a collective agreement to move forward. I met the woman from the bus stop once more, by chance, on a crowded corner. She didn't recognize me. I wasn't looking for recognition, but I recognized the way she stood, balanced, alert, but not tense. She boarded her bus without a moment of hesitation. That small act mattered, not because she was completely safe, no one ever is. It mattered because she felt unburdened. That's the measure we never record in our official reports. The quiet shift from fear to freedom. Across the street, I saw someone offer directions to a tourist. The tourist listened, nodded, and the person who helped simply left. A clean interaction. Consent was visible in the space between them. I didn't log it. I just smiled. It was a small, perfect moment of trust, the kind of thing you fight to protect. Later, back in the office, a new trainee asked me what to look for out there. What are the signs? I didn't hand them a checklist of suspicious behaviors. I said, watch for what lingers, pauses in conversation that don't end, help that doesn't withdraw when it's no longer needed, a presence that resists departure long after it should have gone. These are the subtle shadows, the things that tell you the real story. Then I added, and watch yourself, because this kind of vigilance leaves marks. It changes you, even when it works, even when you succeed. I turned off the light. The city continued its rhythm outside the window. The work remained, not as an urgency anymore, but as a form of care. The pattern faded. The responsibility stayed. Chapter 77, titled The Handover. Knowledge doesn't protect anyone until it's carried by someone else. The training room felt smaller than I remembered. The chairs were different. The faces were new, but it had the same quiet that always settles before a lesson that matters. I wasn't there to teach procedures. They already knew those by heart. I was there to explain why we stopped looking for villains and started watching space. I didn't show them case files. I showed them a map. Bus stops, cafes, libraries, places where the offer of help is believable, where it doesn't raise suspicion. Don't watch people, I said to the room. Watch endings. They all leaned in, intrigued. Endings are so much easier to miss than beginnings. I told them about the pauses in conversation that stretch just a second too long, about offers of help that don't retreat when they should, about the kind of smiles that wait for compliance, not for a genuine response. I didn't use any names. I didn't mention specific cases. I just gave them the patterns, the subtle tells that signal something is wrong. Finally, one trainee raised a hand. What if we're wrong? She asked. I nodded. You will be, I said. Most of the time. That's the real cost of prevention. You have to accept 100 false alarms just to avoid that one missed signal. Another trainee asked when to act. I let the question hang in the air for a moment before I answered. You act, I said, looking around the room, when your presence restores balance. It's not about making arrests. It's not about issuing warnings. It's simply about restoring balance. After the session, they filed out quietly. They weren't energized or excited. They were thoughtful. That was better. That was exactly what I wanted. As I was packing up my things, one of them stayed behind. She was young, with a focused intensity in her eyes. What if someone notices us noticing? She asked. I smiled. A real smile this time. Then they're already adjusting their behavior. Outside, the city moved on, the same way it always had. But now, more eyes understood what to look for. I handed the watch file to its new custodian. I didn't explain everything. I left room for them to learn on their own. That's how knowledge survives, not by control. It survives by trust. The work didn't end. It just changed hands. Chapter 78 of The Cases That Wait, titled The New EYES. Fresh eyes don't know what to ignore. And she hadn't learned what was normal yet. That helped. During her first week on rotation, she didn't rush anything. She didn't make assumptions. Instead, she watched how people ended their conversations. Who left first? Who waited? Who adjusted their position when someone else stepped back? One day at the cafe, she noticed something small. It wasn't about a person. but about the space between them. A woman was standing, her bag slung over one shoulder. A man was speaking to her softly. It all seemed polite, nothing obviously wrong. But when the woman shifted her weight, leaning away, he didn't mirror the movement. He stayed exactly where he was, maintaining the alignment. She wrote it down in her notebook, not as a concern, just as an observation. Later that day, she watched another interaction between two different people. The same kind of moment. An offer was made, and a refusal was given. This time, however, the man stepped back immediately. The distance was restored. The contrast between these two moments mattered. She didn't feel alarmed, but she felt a sense of clarity. Back at her desk, she compared her notes. The words from her training echoed in her mind. Watch the endings. She flagged the first interaction, not to escalate the situation, but simply to watch again. No phone call, no approach, just focused attention. The next day, she saw the same man at the same cafe. This time, he was with a different woman, but he maintained the same physical alignment. Still polite, still subtle. But now, it wasn't just a single event. It was a shape, a pattern emerging. She reported it up the chain of command. Calmly, precisely. She used no emotional words or adjectives, just the sequence of events. When the response came back, it was brief. Good catch, keep watching. She exhaled. It wasn't a feeling of relief she felt, but validation. Fresh eyes don't see danger everywhere. They see differences. And differences, when noticed early enough, can prevent harmful patterns from settling in. She closed her notebook and looked up, ready to keep learning what most people stop seeing far too soon. She didn't see a threat. She saw a deviation. Chapter 79 of the novel, The Cases That Wait, titled The First Test. Training teaches you what to see. Judgment decides what to do. She didn't have confirmation. That was the problem. There was no escalation, no complaint, no rule broken, just a pattern forming too neatly to ignore. The man returned for a third time. Same cafe, same seat, different woman. And that last detail mattered more than anything else. She watched the exchange. An offer was made. A refusal was given. He adjusted his approach this time. He stepped back. It was almost perfect. Almost, but when the woman turned away, he followed her movement with his eyes. He tracked her, but he stayed seated. He did nothing. And nothing is a very hard thing to act on. She checked the time and logged the duration. The pause ended cleanly. No harm done. No continuation. Her radio stayed silent. This was the test. Escalate and risk being wrong, or stay quiet and risk missing the moment where silence becomes permission. She remembered her training. Restore balance. Don't confront. Don't accuse. Restore. So she stood up. She walked past his table, not even looking at him. She stopped beside the woman, very casual. Hey, she said, they're closing this section for cleaning. Not official, not authoritative, just a presence. The woman nodded immediately and moved. The relief on her face was visible only if you were trained to see it. The man didn't protest. He didn't follow. He didn't even smile. He just gathered his things and left. Later, the report was short. No incident. No action taken. Just a note. Presence introduced. Pattern disrupted. Her supervisor read it twice, then wrote a single line underneath. Good judgment. She sat back, her heart steady. It wasn't an adrenaline rush. It was alignment. This is what the work looked like when it functioned properly. No heroics. No aftermath. Just a moment redirected early enough that it never needed a name. She didn't stop anything. She prevented it. Chapter 80 from the novel, The Cases That Wait, titled The Quiet Approval. Real approval doesn't make noise. No meeting was called. No formal commendation was issued. Her report simply stayed where it was, untouched. And that, in itself, was the signal. Her supervisor didn't correct a single word, didn't add any emphasis. He just forwarded it to the official watch channel. That one action meant her work belonged. It was accepted. Over the next week, similar notes began to appear from other officers. They were short, neutral, and precise. A presence was introduced into a situation. The conversation ended early. No follow-up was required. It was a new, subtle method of de-escalation, and it was catching on. No one used her name. They didn't need to. The method itself was what mattered. The idea was spreading, becoming part of the collective intuition of the force. Even at the local cafe, the staff started adjusting their behavior naturally, almost unconsciously. A cup would be placed strategically between two tense tables. A server would do a casual check-in at just the right moment. It was movement without confrontation. Nothing was ever directed. It was just observed and understood. The man who had caused the initial trouble never returned. No one logged that fact. An absence doesn't need documentation once it becomes the expected outcome. The problem had been solved, not just managed. During one shift change, she caught her supervisor watching her from across the room. He wasn't evaluating her performance, he was learning. That was new, a significant shift in their dynamic. Later, a young trainee approached her, full of questions. "How did you know when to step in?" he asked, looking for a rule, a clear guideline. She didn't give him one. Instead, she said, "You step in when the room needs a reason to breathe." That phrase spread through the precinct. Not formally, of course. It was whispered in hallways, mentioned over coffee. It became part of their shared language, the way new ideas always do. Language always moves first, paving the way for changes in action. At the end of a long day, she sat down and updated her personal notebook with just one line. The pattern held. She wasn't tracking the man anymore. She was tracking the approach, the method, and its ripple effects. She closed the cover. There was no feeling of triumphant satisfaction, just a quiet, grounding steadiness. This is what true approval feels like. It isn't a celebration or a reward. It feels like permission to continue. No one ever said the words "well done," but in the quiet confidence of her colleagues, in the calm of the cafe, in the very air of the precinct, everything said it.